Hello, welcome to the episode number 3 of TUNERD Adventures hosted by HTG Tuning. This time we're in the Netherlands. We have 2 days, 4 cars, 2 transmission types, both the DCT and the 8 HP, so let's go. Alright, so we want to do a launch control on the Aristo, and we came up with the idea how to do it very simple way, because we need to integrate ECU side of things and the GCU side of things. In this case we do have a EMU black, and the EMU black is communicating with the GCU over a CAN bus. EMU knows the gear position, VSS, so the vehicle speed value from the GCU, and we are going to use this to create a launch strategy. Long story short, we have 3 options to start driving with the GCU. One is by using clutch by wire, so like a clutch dump. Second is to using alternative take-up tables, like launch table, and a normal, so you just press throttle and you go. But we have a big turbo in the Aristo, so we need to spool it up this way. We want to use a launch control feature in the ECU, so like a 2-step rev limiter to build up the boost. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a logic function in the EMU, in this case, which is basically in the ECU. I will check if the VSS, the vehicle speed, is below or even 5 kilometers per hour. If it is 5, maybe we'll set it 10, 15, whatever, we'll see. We're going to limit the engine speed, cut the ignition so the boost comes on. At the same time, to make it effective, in the GCU we can hold the clutch fully disengaged. So then the RPM will hit, it will create a boost, and we release the clutch, so just like in manual, but having advantage of actually having the boost. So this is the easiest way, and it only requires input to the GCU, like clutch by wire. Second option would be to use a launch table, so it would be a little different from a normal take-up table. We would not have any pressure until, let's say, this launch RPM, like 4.5K. But then we would need some input to disable limit strategy in the EMU, so like to disengage it, so not a variable of a speed but of some input. The RPM would go higher, and in this table we would pass zone with no pressure below 4.5, and we would hit a zone with a big pressure, so we would just like have a different take-up table. So this is also doable. With this strategy we could use a little preload, because we can actually feel the clutches a little bit automatically, so the suspension sits down. But the downside of it is that the clutches will hit. We can do the same thing with the clutch by wire, but just releasing it tiny bit, so you know, adjust a preload. You can do it with the foot. This would be automated. And the other thing would be normal, but we won't use it. So we're going for clutch by wire?
Yeah, and we're using the brake pedal switch.
Yeah, the brake pedal switch.
As a clutch switch.
Okay, but here we come to another problem, because clutch by wire, having on the brake, would always, when you brake, it would drop the pressure. So I don't think it's the best idea.
But there's no brake switch going into the GCU right now.
Okay, so
we'll make it a clutch switch.
Oh, we'll make it a clutch switch. So yeah. not the actual brake switch, just the clutch switch. Yeah, okay, so this will
set it up like that.
Or any button or any potentiometer we can use.
Yeah, but it's on the start, it's easy to just push the brake, full throttle, and then let go.
Yeah.
And this is the easier way for us to set up on track when we're gonna go drag racing, to just mess with the EMU.
Okay.
For the launch.
Yeah, but
I think this is the more easiest way for us than this one.
Yeah, but just worth mentioning that if you assign a actual brake pedal as a clutch by wire input, then every time that you press the brake, so even driving normally, it will drop the clutches. Yeah. Clutch by wire to brake pedal, then every time that the car would be decelerating on the brake, it would drop the clutch. So if we want to use a launch strategy with actual brake, we cannot use this option. We would need to use launch table. So we have 2 tables, let's say normal take-up, and we have a launch take-up. Okay, so in this case, in a normal take-up, we have pressure rising, let's say equally to the load, right, or to the RPM. Let's say, okay, because it's a little more complicated. But in the launch table, we would use like minimum pressure, rise, and at the point where we have the ECU limit, okay, launch step, then we would bump the pressure high to get it moving. So we could use a launch table a little differently shaped on the pressure than the normal take-up to make small tiny preload, but not enough to, you know, to stall the car or burn the clutches, and then bump it up and assign it as this option that we want to use, if we want to use the brake for this. Because then, if you're braking and driving normally, it is going to change a take-up table, but if you're braking, you're not in a take-up mode, you're in a drive mode, so it's actually not affecting anything. And we would still use those values that are idling, okay? We'll still use the same values more or less here. So I think we can do it like this if we actually want to use brake, or we use the clutch by wire as some alternative. So we can use one of those two options. We have a tiny feature on the F series and the E series M-Power shifter. Okay? So if you have this knob, you can use a park function, because normally the M4 and 3 they do not have a park function, only when the car is stopped and turned off. So if we are on the drive mode here, go to neutral, but hold neutral, we're back in the parking, so the parking lock goes down and you can actually have the car in the parking mode without turning it off. A little cool feature. So I figured out we were going to use paddles as a clutch by wire input for the launch strategy. So I have both paddles connected to the analog inputs. So I have used the RBC input, which is reverse binary code, and in this case I do have assigned analog inputs, which are the paddles connected to. So if I press one paddle, the RBC gives me value of 1, if I press the second it gives me value of 3, but if I press 2 it gives me value of 2. So as I can see, depending on the combination, it gives a certain value. So once I have those three numbers being generated, according to what I'm pressing, I use a compare input. So the compare input checks what value we're getting. So I have it assigned to this compare input is assigned to the RBC input. It checks if the value is 2 with a deviation of 0, so exactly 2. And if it's true, then it's triggering time input. What is time input? Instead of being an instant switch, you know, straight line on off, this is a clutch, so we want to have a nice ramp. So I'm using this compare input. If it's true, it triggers time input. So as soon as I press both paddles, it activates the time input, and the clutch is fully disengaged. But when I'm releasing it, instead of, you know, dumping it fully, take a look. The middle graph here, the green line, pressing 2, as you can see, it's up, so the clutch is fully pressed, releasing, and as you can see, it drew me a nice line. We're dropping very quickly to the middle position, having a little slip there, and then ramping back completely off. So it's like a halfway position of a clutch. So this is a simple way how to use two paddles. But if I press just one, it's not triggering a clutch. But right now, it's turning on. So you can actually even use it like, you know, driving. You want to do a clutch kick, you just press 2. It's wow, wow, wow. It will just, you know, do a clutch kicks. So this is a simple usage of, you know, checking if both inputs are up. If yes, then trigger time-based input. And it's very simple. But now normal shifting, 2 paddles, clutch kick. So just like in the Porsche GT3 with the PDK, you can do actually some, you know, drifting. So simple way. Now we need to assign the ECU side of things. So it starts the launch control strategy and stuff. waiting for the car to come again. The launch control is set. We are launching at like 4,600 RPM. With 2 paddles holding, we engage clutch-by-wire strategy. So if ECU sees a speed below 5 or 10, it engages the launch control rev limiter. You're fully on the throttle. It cuts. It builds the boost. You release the paddles. Wheel starts to spin. So the ECU disengages a limit strategy above a certain speed, and then he goes normally. Looks pretty good. We increased the RPM a little bit because we started from like 3,500, which was not enough. But yeah, looks good. Everything good? You happy?
Good. Yeah.
That's good.
Driving fine.
Did you make any changes, Bartek? Little.
Just like tiny. But the automotive shifts sooner now. I've just done like minimal changes.
And he's a bit afraid for the launch.
You have to work not to do like the release, but just like you can hold it like this and what? That will be better. It will be easier because if you release only the low, if you release only one pedal, you'll engage the upshift.
Yeah.
So you need to just drop it like a spot.
Drop it like that.